Welcome to the Top 10 Gardener with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now, welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Mountain Gardener. Your host, Ken Lain, here every week talking about the landscapes of northern Arizona. I did write an article this last week. It's a popular question. It's just, are coffee grounds good for your plants or for your gardens? So I thought I would just cover that because we are into tea. I mean, it's been chilly outside. We're all inside sipping a little bit more tea, coffee. And basically what it comes down to is some folks say that's not good. Some folks say it is, and I kind of take the middle ground. And so a few coffee grounds are good for plants. They have some nitrogen in it, about 1.5% nitrogen to your, so if you make a coffee tea, so about a cup of coffee grounds to about 5 gallons of water, let it steep overnight. Plants will like that, just like you do. Fresh, I wouldn't say fresh coffee, no. Used coffee grounds soaked or steeped in a 5-gallon bucket of water, that'd be great. Adding to your natural compost pile, that's the best. I mean, that's just let it all. It's basically what coffee grounds are, is they're green waste. So a lot of you grow buckwheat or you're growing different crops on top of your gardens, then you'll till that in for next spring's growth. It's a nitrogen source. Coffee grounds are sort of like that. And so a few grounds on top of your plants, fine, especially outdoors. Indoors, where it's a real small, confined space, it's easy to overdo it. There is some research, or some folks have said that it can weaken plants. I think because you get too much of it. And some plants don't like coffee, like tomatoes. Never add coffee grounds where your tomatoes are going to be. They don't like it. But hydrangeas, things that like more acidic type of soil, they're going to love it because there is an acidy mix to it. Actually, fresh coffee grounds are acidic. So they're really like fresh coffee grounds. So that stale coffee you've had, you bought it last year for visitors that were coming, or you bought a flavor, man, this is not going to make the cup of joe I want. Use it up outside around your acid-loving plants. They're going to like that. So hydrangeas, hollies, camellias, they're going to love fresh coffee grounds. I would say used ones aren't going to be as productive for those folks, for an acid-loving plant, but they'll pick up the nitrogen. So it's still a positive. So coffee grounds have nitrogen, some magnesium, some calcium, some potassium, some other trace elements. So they're going to pick up on that. And so if you're doing, let's say, if you get access to a lot of coffee grounds, like you've got Starbucks, they are going to give you like a trash can full every day. That could be okay, but you can get a little bit too much. So the ratio is 4-1. So one amount, so whatever that bucket is of coffee grounds, to about 4 added brown waste. So this is leaves and grass clippings and your kitchen waste. So things that help to compost your compost pile. 4-1 is the ratio. So 1 coffee, 4 to other stuff you're going to compost. This is your old foliage from last year. You're composting the pile. So 4-1. More than that, it's not going to be good for your plants. Okay, worms. They love coffee grounds. So they're going to be attracted. They're going to come in for the coffee grounds. So they're going to help compost it down. They like the taste, just like you do. So it's a weird thing. Actually, if you've got a small compost bin that you're growing some worms in, to see you've got a worm bin, you can add about a cup of coffee grounds, used coffee grounds, per week. They're going to eat that up and love it. So might get juiced. I don't know. It could help them. That's one key pest. There is some studies, some gardeners show, I haven't quite found this to be the case, but coffee grounds can repel or keep snails and slugs away. There's an abrasiveness to it. They don't like to crawl across it. So I haven't quite found that the case. I've got some other better snail. If you have snail and slug problems, come see me. I can show you how to keep them out of there. So diatomaceous earth is probably a better solution for that. It's an organic that you sprinkle around there. They crawl across it. It cuts their either their exoskeleton or their body out, and they dry out basically. They just dehydrate. That's a better choice. It is good at keeping cats away. So cats don't like to muck around in coffee grounds. So if you're out there, if they're using your gardens as a cat litter box, you don't want that. Put coffee grounds where they tend to congregate, and they'll stop using your under your deck or around your plants. Could be a real good way to keep them out. So anyway, that's kind of coffee grounds. It's not good. It's not bad. I like to think of coffee grounds as just more compost. It's hard to get enough. The challenge I find with folks is they use a few coffee grounds and thinking, oh, that's good. I don't ever have to fertilize again. No, it doesn't even come close. You need to put an actual fertilizer on it. So right now I'm trying to juice my evergreens. I've got some that are a little sickly, a little thinner than I want, or they're just smaller. And I'm trying to get them to set the stage for next spring. So in March, they're going to take off with just new growth. Sometime as soon as this weather breaks, their buds are swelling right now. They're going to elongate. And things like pine trees, spruce, fir, cypress, cedars, junipers, your evergreen plants, you really only get one shot at this. They're going to grow in the spring, and whatever growth you get, that's all you're going to get for the entire year. It doesn't keep growing through the next season. So you get one shot. And so I'm trying to get a few of my plants to really set that new bud so I can maximize the growth. You can actually double down on the growth. You could double the growth of a plant by fertilizing it. So I'm giving some of my plants, especially the spring bloomers. So lilacs got fertilized, the forsythia got fertilized, all my evergreens got fertilized this last couple of weeks ago. So I want to take advantage of the snow when I'm fertilize, get things going, get that stuff in the ground so the plants can pick it up and they'll actually use it to form next spring's bud growth. I'll juice it again when I start to see that new candle growth on a pine tree. When I start to see that grow, I'll give it even a little bit more. So I'm trying to max out the growth rate. If you've got a brand new landscape, that's a good way to do it. Fertilize it now and again, and into March, something like that, and you'll double the growth rate. You'll get more flowers on your crab apples. You get more flowers on your red buds. You'll get better blooms on your lilacs by fertilizing now and again in spring. Coffee grounds don't even come close to that. You need to actually have an actual fertilizer. So I'm using all-purpose plant food. So 744 all-purpose plant. So an organic fertilizer we put together here at the garden center. It's granular. You sprinkle it out there, pray for more snow, and it just slowly works its way in. Feeds your worms. I was doing some planting this last week of some Arizona cypress, and worms, big, juicy, fat ones, are right there on top of the ground. They were just right there, and so they were happy. So I know it's cold outside, but things are still happening in the garden. Your plants are still taking in moisture. They're still taking in nutrients, and they're getting ready for next spring's, apple blossoms, next spring's lilac blossoms, next in spring's new candle growth on your spruce trees. So if you can nurse that along, that's good. Now I know we had a little bit of moisture this last week or so, but not enough to keep things healthy. It was dry so long before this last storm pattern that I actually watered some things. So I've got my irrigation cycling on every 10 days right now. So in the middle of the day. So I'm watering middle of the day so it doesn't freeze, hydrate my plants. And before these storms came, I actually took my hose and I actually hand watered some of my container plants. So I've got some beautiful peonies. The eyes of the peony are starting to show. So, things are happening. They're not blooming, they're not growing, but you can tell, they're setting the stage, getting ready. So I wanted to keep those things healthy. And so my snapdragons, they're not blooming right now, but they're green. I want to keep them happy. So I watered those. And so water goes a long ways. I think you probably should put on your radar, if you're tuned into this, you're obviously a gardener. I would say it would be good to hydrate those plants. I know we had a little bit of snow, not enough to really hydrate, keep things to make a difference. And going back to the beginning, coffee grounds are good for the gardens. A little bit goes a long ways, but it's not a substitute for actual plant foods.
My living room feels so empty.
Now that the Christmas tree is gone, the house just seems so blah.
Brighten it up with a big, bold, beautiful plant from Waters Garden Center.
Fill that cavernous space with tall tropicals, colossal cactus, and sizable succulents that bring the great outdoors indoors.
Make a gorgeous green space you can enjoy all year, not just for a season.
Unique, exclusive, one-of-a-kind houseplants found only at Waters Garden Center in Prescott.
You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com. You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain and the Top 10 Gardener podcast. Welcome to the Top 10 Garden Show.
And we are back with Lisa Waters Lain coming in. She comes in with your garden questions. Just what are people talking about? What kind of questions are your neighbors asking? And so we can learn from that. So welcome to the studio, Lisa.
Thank you.
Got a fantastic hair thing going on today. You look great on camera. Wow. You actually look great off camera.
I was going to say, I'll let that one go.
Those of you that are watching this via Spotify and Apple, that kind of stuff, you see the video piece. Everyone else gets audio only. We'll describe things by many, many words over the next 10 minutes.
Okay, you will.
What kind of garden question we got? Anything good going on?
Well, there's always stuff going on, even in the dead of winter. There's stuff going on. Our first question is from Stacy. She wants to know, can she put wildflower seed down on top of the snow? And if she can still do that, do you still need to cover it with some mulch or dirt to keep the birds off of it?
Yeah, so that's a good. So we've got a class on that. That's the last Saturday of this month. We'll kind of cover that. But here's the synopsis in a nutshell, 90 seconds or less. So Stacy, yes, it's great to put wildflower seed on top of snow. So the snow will actually take it, and what happens is, as the snow melts, it kind of covers the seed, and then as the ground freezes, it heaves, or it expands, and then it shrinks when it thaws, and then it freezes, so you get this expansion, freeze thaw cycle, and it just swallows up the seed. It's great. Now, the little secret that we teach in the class, we'll show you more hands-on this, but we say buy a bag of Waters Premium Mulch when you come in, and your seed. Put the mulch in a wheelbarrow. Mix the seed inside the mulch, so you're creating your own hydro mulch, and that's the insider tip for keeping birds off. So birds are going to like flower seeds, especially winter birds. So they're pecking around looking for wildflower seeds. The bugs are all gone, so their protein source or their food source is seed. So you don't want to put out the world's most expensive bird seed out there. So to hide that by blending it in a wheelbarrow or a tarp or something, or your garden bucket, blend your seed in and then spread that. It does two things, keeps birds off. Secondly, it helps you spread it easier. So wildflowers are really tiny. Some of them are so tiny you can't hardly see them. Some are feathery and want to just float away. They just kind of that's how they're programmed. And so this allows you to spread it more evenly across that garden bed so you get a more consistent pattern. And again, we've got a lot of different styles of wildflower seeds. We make 4 of our own special mixes, blend our own, and then we got a handout. Come ask for it. We'll give it to you. Stacy, come in, visit us. We're lonely here. Come visit the garden center and get your wildflower seed.
So the thing about wildflower seed, you put it down now or between now and March. And sometimes it's hard for gardeners to be patient,
I know, yeah.
But it's not going to pop up next week.
No.
So you've got to be patient and understand that it needs that freeze thaw to go through the winter, but it's not going to really start doing anything until we get some warmer weather to germinate in.
Until it can see the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where a lot of wildflowers like poppies, they need that freeze thaw to scarify or to crack open the hull. They've got this really hard hull. And so it needs to go through this cold. If you were to wait to plant those until, let's say, May,
it's too late.
The poppies wouldn't come up. And so then going back to your point, wildflowers, if you're getting a good mix of wildflowers, you're going to have this wave. They don't all germinate at once. they come up in waves. And you'll see this in the wild. Oh, the poppies are in bloom. Then it's the verbena are in bloom. And then it's the penstemons are in bloom. So they don't all bloom at once. They're coming up at different waves or times. They're giving each other the courtesy of, okay, I'm done. Your turn. You can now show off. You get all the butterflies and hummingbirds. Go for it. So good mix will be, you want a perennial mix, something that comes back and grows even better next year than it did this year.
True. Okay, next question is from Lindsay. We'll see if I can get it out. She purchased some insulation covers to cover some of her roses and things that she thought were maybe a little more sensitive to the winter. Question is, does she leave those on all winter, or is it something you put on, take off?
Yeah, so, most things like roses don't need that much protection unless she's up in Flagstaff or something. We're not the Midwest. I mean, I know we get 4 seasons, but it's pretty mild. And so the ground just doesn't freeze solid. If you're lower elevation, Prescott Valley, Clarkdale, Cottonwood, Sedona, you don't need that at all. They're fine. So it's a overkill. But if you're a gardener, you want to nurse your plants and take care of them more, it's okay. You can leave them on all winter. They're not going to be, I would say, pull them off by March 1st. Because by then we're still cold, but we're over that bitter cold. And you'll see your roses, especially because you called that one out. You'll see the buds. You'll probably see leaves on at that point, especially if you're protecting them. So I think most things, what most of us can do that don't have any kind of insulative cover or burlaps or some of these things, the best thing we can do, insulate the soil. Keep the soil from freeze and thawing. Like we mentioned for the wildflowers, it heaves. It also heaves your roots out of the ground. So if you put it like a 3-inch layer of mulch, compost, that will keep that ground from freezing, and it insulates that plant probably enough at this altitude, insulates it enough to, and it's so much easier than covering things up with burlaps or bags or zippies or whatever they are. It's more effective. The plants are happier and way easier for you. So anyway, that's.
So I have a question about that. If you're say a rose, and you're putting mulch around it for winter protection, does that need to be pulled back come spring or so to kind of help with air circulation?
So it depends. So you don't want mulch or manures or any kind of compost touching the barky area of a plant, because as it starts to grow and the ground activates, there's some bacterial things that can feed off the sugar underneath the bark. So for roses, I love shredded bark. That's really easy. It's breathable. Cedar tends to repel aphids and bugs. So we use a lot of that. We'll put it over top of the crown of certain plants. And then come spring, usually about March, we pull that back. Just keep it over the roots. And so, no, you should not have organic material touching the plants of the base of your trees, your shrubs. Your berries are really sensitive. They don't want anything touching their canes, which seems counterintuitive because they just come out of the ground like weeds. But they don't like mulch and compost to touch that bark.
Okay. All right. Next question is from John. He wants to plant some fruit trees in his yard.
John, right on.
Wants to know, is it still too early to be planting? If so, when is the optimal time to plant?
Yeah. So John, now is not optimal because your inventory levels are terrible right now. So we've got a few fruit trees, not a lot. That is the first truckload of plants we bring in. So I think it's 2 weeks out right now. So it'll be the end of this month. We'll have hundreds of fruit trees. As soon as you can find them, grab them, because it's a limited inventory. So especially the weird, funky ones. So you've got pluots. We're going to have like 10 of them all season. Grab them right away. Nuts, almonds, walnuts, grab them right away. Don't wait. Don't think about it. Just grab it. And take it home with you, or have us hold it while you think about where to put it. Because literally by the next weekend, they'll be gone. And so if you've got, Macintosh apples, we'll have lots of those. Honeycrisp, the number one seller, we'll have lots of those. Less pressure, but as soon as you can find them, grab them. You can put them in the ground whenever. At that point, our ground does not freeze solid here. So we might get a little skiff of ice, the top layer, but it doesn't freeze. So if those roots are kept from freezing, you're planting it correctly, you're watering it really well, John, go for it. You're in the planting season. I would say ideally fruit trees or actually deciduous trees, whether it's a blooming redbud, crabapple, robinia, locust, maples, aspens, those plants, if you can plant those before they leaf out, put them in the ground so when they wake up from their winter slumber, they kind of go, "Whoa, what just happened here? I've been teleformed into the soil over here. Whoa, what just happened?" So they wake up and they're going, "Okay, well, it must be okay. I've wintered over here. I'll just grow here." And so you have less transplant shock. It's ideal. If you want any hope of fruit for this coming spring, you need them in before they leaf out. Anyway, we can go into more of that as far as what age, that kind of what variety is best. But your question was, when's the best time? Now, as soon as you can find them, I'd say February, March, perfect time. Great question, John. Okay, Ken and Lisa Lain, the Mountain Gardeners. Be right back after this.
My living room feels so empty.
Now that the Christmas tree is gone, the house just seems so blah.
Brighten it up with a big, bold, beautiful plant from Waters Garden Center.
Fill that cavernous space with tall tropicals, colossal cactus, and sizable succulents that bring the great outdoors indoors.
Make a gorgeous green space you can enjoy all year, not just for a season.
Unique, exclusive, one-of-a-kind houseplants found only at Waters Garden Center in Prescott.
You're listening to Ken Lain, aka the Top 10 Gardener. Ken can be found throughout the week in Prescott at Waters Family Garden Center. Listen daily as he answers the top 10 questions of the week, streaming on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Garden Show with garden expert Ken Lain. Join the conversation daily as he answers timely garden questions. Email Ken a question directly from your phone to his desktop through the web at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Or visit face-to-face throughout the week where he can be found at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
I had mentioned I put in a row of Arizona cypress in the last couple of weeks. So I'm planting. So they just look good. In fact, I put in icy blue Arizona cypress. It's a variation of an Arizona cypress, the traditional one. We have both at the gardens, and we've got 3 or 4 varieties, but there's not just one, there's several. This is a new variety that is bluer, silvery blue. It's very pretty. Oh my gosh. It still grows the same height. 20, 25 foot tall by 12 foot wide. So it's a big screening plant. I want to screen between 2 properties. And so planted 3 of these, 15-gallon size, and they are happy. I planted them just before this storm hit, and they're out there just happy as could be. They're fine with that. They'll take the cold, no problem. They'll actually send off some roots, but it's okay to plant those. As you're looking at them, they're kind of like spruce trees. There's Colorado spruce, which is the spruce tree that grows wild here throughout northern Arizona. We're famous for those, and our fir trees. So we've got a lot of evergreens, and our ponderosa pines and our pinyon pines. We're famous for our evergreens. But Arizona cypress is also one of us. But like a Colorado spruce, there's different models. It's such a good, strong plant throughout the country that they're developing new varieties because it's gaining some interest. And so they'll have some that are a little shorter. They've got some that are gold, some that are really blue. You got your traditional, more of a blue-green kind of native looking. It almost looks like a juniper tree, like a native juniper. Looks like that. They're all going to grow, I would say, one of the fastest growing of the evergreens. So I'd say that one and Deodar cedar, those are probably the 2 fastest growing. If you want a thick screen, like by the end of the year, that's the one. And so it just doubles down. So actually what really happens, kind of cypress and junipers are sort of similar this way. The first year, they don't grow that much. I mean, a little bit, you go, oh, that's happy. It looks like it's taking, that's good. But it doesn't really have a lot of top growth. It's actually growing underground. It's got to put its roots out first. Then that following season after you plant it, it just quadruples. It just goes woof, grows really, really fast. I mean, it's like, wow, where did this plant just come from? but they need to root first, then they have their top growth. So junipers and cypress are both sort of like that. Actually, all plants are sort of like that, but some just they're such strong growers. Autumn blaze maples, you got poplars, the quaking aspens. They just grow fast. They grow so fast all the time, but you'll notice that second season they grow more than they did the first season. So, but particularly noticeable for evergreens. Arizona cypress, it is actually a companion plant of January. So it's one that we feature. We partner that with another good looking plant in January with Austrian pine. So Arizona cypress, kind of a blue color. Pine trees are traditionally very green. So this is Austrian pine's a long needle pine. It looks like a ponderosa, but it holds its foliage right down to the ground. So it's much more shapely, much prettier landscape plant. And it doesn't get as big. So ponderosa gets 100-foot tall. I mean, it's just, this goes to the moon. Austrian pine gets down to about 30, 35. That's about where they tend to max out, about 10, 12 foot wide, just nice foliage right down to the ground, central trunk, branches coming off. It's everything you want to see in a nice, good looking pine tree. We partner that with mint julep junipers. Now, this is juniper, hold on with me. So I know some of you are going, oh, junipers, I would never plant one of those. I have allergies. Not this one. It's a female. It doesn't have the pollen that a lot of the native junipers have, but it's just as hardy. Gets up about head high, head wide. It just kind of has this nice, shapely 5-6 foot kind of step down size. It looks good year round. Partner that with red clusterberry cotoneaster. This is another evergreen. So cotoneaster, again, it's related to the native cotoneaster that grows here. So it's very hardy. Gets up easily, well above head high. So maybe 10 by 10 by 10, kind of a big hedge plant. But it's got blue to purple foliage right now, green to blue foliage in the growing season, but has white flowers in spring, red berries right now. It's got a lot going on for it. And it's evergreen. Companion plant with all these guys are companion. They look good together. The last one is boxwood. You folks from the East Coast, you made boxwood famous. It's the #1 selling plant in the country, boxwood. There's a lot of varieties. I kind of featured out winter gem boxwood. I think it just has a prettier green to it that matches all these others. So for companion plants, those are the ones you want to plant in January because they just always make your January landscape outshine the rest. So that's Arizona cypress, Austrian pine, mint julep juniper, red clusterberry cotoneaster, and winter gem boxwoods. But Arizona cypress, I planted several of those just because I need to screen something out and I want it to go fast. They just look good together. So, okay, back with Lisa Waters Lain in with her garden segment right after this. Not everyone can grow wildflowers, but we'll make sure you're not one of them.
At Waters, we know which wildflowers sprout, thrive, and bloom with success.
We're wild about wildflowers with many of our own Arizona blends.
Like our Arizona native mix, butterfly and hummingbird mixes, and all are big, bold, and beautiful.
At Waters, we know wildflowers, and winter's a season to spread new seed.
You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Gardener with garden expert Ken Lain. Join him daily as he answers timely garden questions that are sure to make a difference in your gardens. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
We are back with Lisa Waters Lain in the studio. She comes each week and just shares her garden perspectives, just a different angle. And I just love gardeners, love talking to them. You get so many different ways of doing something. There's no one way to garden. There's a dozen different ways.
That is true.
And you're always learning. So you never quite figure it out. Or as soon as you do figure it out, they change the plant. They give you new variety, new color. Just it keeps you young is what it does.
Very much so.
Welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how are you?
I am loving the new year.
Are you?
We're in the January's budget season. So how many
Yes.
tomatoes do we need to grow? How many fruit trees are we going to need? How many customers? What kind of marketing do we need? Who do you partner with? How many cashiers do you need Mother's Day weekend? You got to know that in January. So you
That's
hire
true.
enough. So we're coming up on hiring season. Usually we'll start putting my all call out the end of this month. February, we'll start interviewing, then we're onboarding into February, March, and just takes off from there. So you got to always be ready. So it's kind of fun.
It is fun. Definitely.
Small business, you never get bored. You get different hats. You could be talking to the mayor of the city about a new project, one thing, raising money for your favorite nonprofit the next, and then talking to gardeners or in a trench, cleaning out toilets the next. You just always have these different hats on that you wear. If you want the same consistent all the time, being a small business owner is not your thing.
That is true.
If you want safety, not your thing. You want excitement, never getting bored, be controlling your own destiny. If you want to make every kid's game or swim meet or band thing, become a small business owner, because you'll never miss one. And so, but you'll work a lot of hours. And so it just kind of, there's pros and cons to everything.
Always. But even though it's January and everybody thinks, well, garden centers nothing's going on, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah. We started our classes. So classes every Saturday, and we've been painting inside the store. We love to paint and change the colors. I don't think the walls will ever fall down because there's too many layers of paint. So we've been busy doing stuff still.
I think that's partly just so garden centers can look dirty and rusty and falling apart if you don't your garden can do that. You need to go through and dust them off, clean them up. I think a restaurant, if they got the same paintings, the same scheme they've had for the last 5 years, who wants to go into a dark, dingy? It starts to feel dirty. Well, we have an opportunity every spring to freshen things up. Wait till folks see in another month. I just got updates on our new shade structure going in. It's going to be pretty spectacular.
This will be nice.
It'll be the talk of the town when we get all done. It'll be fun.
Yeah. So things are always going on, and things are going on in your yard too. So this time of year, a lot of people have issues with deer. A lot of deer. Some javelina, not as much this time of year. Bunnies, because they're out. They're hungry. They're looking for stuff to eat. We've had snow. Everything's dormant. Deer are coming into people's yards. So you're in those certain areas, forest trails,
wildland
interface places. You're going to struggle with critters. So I think you need to be aware of that going in. Just they're going to be there
unless you fence them out.
Well, you can fence, and that's definitely one thing you do. Although there's some places that won't allow you to put fences.
Not going to let you do that.
So I think when you're going to be dealing with critters, that's the most important thing. Be aware. Second thing is learn about kind of their habits, because like we said, right now, deer are very active because they're out looking for stuff. So, deer are probably going to be in your yard this time of year.
Every winter.
So you probably do need to protect those aspen trees that you have sitting out there, or that maple tree, or those fruit trees. So just being aware of the timing of when they're in your yard is also hugely important. You need to be aware of that. Also, think about, are you encouraging them to
or
come
are your neighbors feeding them next door?
And that's a struggle too, because I love birds. I get it. People want to put out the bird feeders, but you want to have a javelina in your yard? Put a bird feeder. Or put a quail block out. Oh my gosh. You'll have them the next day going, thank you. They'll be carrying the quail block away. So think about your habits and what you're doing. Even things like dog food and cat food left outside can encourage the javelina, skunks, raccoons, rats. So think about what you're doing that might be encouraging them to come in as well. And then also said, like, the seasonality of things. So, just be aware that they're out there. They're going to be coming. And like you said, what do you do? If they're going to be there, what are you going to do?
Shotgun.
Fencing, like you said,
That's a better choice.
And it could be if so animals are very habitual, very migratory. They're going to come into your yard almost always the same way, right? They're following a path. If you can block that path off, maybe you don't have to fence the entire yard, but you're blocking that path where they're specifically coming through. It could definitely help, could take some of that pressure off. Fencing could also be, so we recommend using bird netting around aspens and that type of thing, because the deer don't like to get their horns stuck in it. They don't like their teeth in it. So you're just wrapping that around a tree a couple of times, tying it on or stapling it on, and it can save your trees. And it's not like you always need to leave that on year round, but when the presence is heavy, you put it on out there.
Yeah, easy fix, easy peasy.
The other thing that they really love, and we haven't hit it yet, but is that new tender growth.
It's coming.
So a lot of plants that we say are resistant to animals, and 90% of the time they are, but there's that time in spring where that new growth, especially photinias, things like that, where that new growth is just so tender and they're like, I'm hungry. It's been a long winter. I'm going to try this no matter what. And the other one is when the fawns are out, because fawns are like stupid kids, right? They put everything in their mouth.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. So you just have to be aware of that and take some precautions. The deer netting helps. The other thing that can sometimes help a lot too is just fishing line, that monofilament line.
Okay.
Just kind of wrapping it around a few times. It just throws them off. It's a discouragement.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best thing you can do is just discourage them. And along with that comes repellents. So repellents are very much a discourager. They're not 100% foolproof. They're not always going to work. But you're kind of going, you don't want that shrub. Go check out my neighbor's shrub.
Don't eat my neighbor's plants. Don't, keep moving on.
Right. And usually what I tell people also is if you're planting a new plant in the yard, use a repellent around it.
Oh, yeah.
Because for javelinas, there's a scent of that dirt, and they're like, oh, something's been digging here. I'm going to go check that out. And animals are curious. And rabbits and deer, they're going to be curious about what that is and think, well, maybe I do like it. Maybe I don't, but I better try it. So you're just discourage them to begin with. And then hopefully they just learn. Animals,
this is their
habitual.
home.
Right.
They camp out there. They notice one new plant.
Yeah.
They're going to go, oh, I don't remember that. Let's go check it out. Hey, Bob, come over here with me. Let's go see if we can kick this thing over.
So definitely just doing some things to discourage them. And another idea that I really like is, say you have an aspen or a shrub that they just kind of tend to mess with, put something around it, some smaller plants around it that are pretty darn sure. So catmint, Nepeta.
Oh, yeah.
That is one deer almost, I can't ever think of a time I've seen them eat it. So putting that around some of those aspens or those other shrubs that they might be bothering really discourages them. Again, so catmint is excellent. Lavender, creeping phlox, hyssops, salvias. Those are all things. Rosemary. Yeah. So just being strategic about where you plant things can also help.
Great advice, Lisa. How to garden with deer and javelina, wildlife in your yard. As the days get longer and brighter, houseplants can struggle and scorch, but we have the solution.
At Waters, we've organized our houseplants from A to Z for the brightest of sunny locations, many even bloom.
With experts that know plants and how to make them grow.
Shipments of the freshest houseplants in town have just arrived from A to Z and ready for a bright new home.
You're listening to garden expert Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Look for more tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts through Ken's website. Additional shows of this podcast, read his weekly garden column, or follow him on Facebook, Instagram at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Welcome to the Top 10 Garden Show with Ken Lain. Listen to Ken's tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts guaranteed to make your gardens more beautiful than ever this year. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
So all week I've been saying I would talk about the 17 best landscape shrubs of spring. And I'm going to dedicate this segment just to that. And I don't have time to go into a lot of detail, but these are kind of the number one sellers, the most popular, the prettiest, easy to grow. They just have a lot going on for them. And a lot of the plants, you'll know what they are, who they are. So these aren't just winter good looking plants. These are things that are going to be transitioning here quickly as we start getting into after about Valentine's Day, another just month out, five weeks or so. You'll see daffodils starting to bloom. You'll see forsythia starting to crack. The winter jasmine will be in full glorious bloom. The first leading indicators, those plants will start to bloom. These are going to be some of those. And so I'll just start out with number one, pretty much in the Midwest. You all made this one famous, barberry. Boy, it's a little plant, not knee high. Typically, there's a lot of models. I probably have a dozen different varieties that we sell here at the garden center. But barberry is easy to grow, takes our sun, takes our wind, takes our alkaline soil, always has bright, shiny foliage, and it's got a flower to it, although not really significant. It's a pollinator. The bees will love it. The butterflies will love it. But you're planting it for the foliage, how it looks, that driveway that's got that roundabout driveway, and you got that big mound in the middle. This really looks good, and it'll take that heat and that wind that comes off that asphalt really, really well. It goes with Rose of Sharon. You folks from the more tropical climates, California's, Tucson's, Phoenix, Hawaii, you love your hibiscus, that great big old hibiscus with the flower the size of your hand. Well, that doesn't grow here, but Rose of Sharon does. It's also a hibiscus. The botanical name is hibiscus, but Rose of Sharon is the common name. It's got a bit smaller flower, so maybe it's the size of a baseball instead of your hand. So it's got a big flower, but it makes up for it in sheer quantity. The Rose of Sharon will have literally hundreds of flowers on this plant, whereas a traditional tropical hibiscus might have a dozen. So I've literally seen Rose of Sharons fall over because the weight of all the flowers was just so great that it had to be staked back up. It's a personal experience. It's a great plant for you. And it goes down to, I think, minus 40 degrees, some crazy cold we will never see. Rose of Sharon's a great, if you want hibiscus, that's the one you want. It really grows well. Okay, bluebeard shrub or Coreopteris or false spirea. It has a lot of different names, but bluebeard, it's about a hip-high plant, kind of mounding. The beauty that it has is fast green growth and then blue flowers, and it's super low maintenance. It's the same color as Russian sage. That's probably the number one seller here. It can be kind of weedy, gets out of control sometimes. This has the same flower, but almost no pruning care. It always comes back next spring looking good. You don't have to cut it back to the ground to start over again. Just easy to care for and a true pollinator. Your butterflies are going to love you for having a bluebeard shrub out there. Butterfly bush, that's another one. So we grow butterfly bush better than anywhere else in the country. And we're on the migratory path for a lot of monarchs. A lot of butterflies use this part of the state as a highway. And they're using your butterfly bush as a jump off point, kind of a recharge as they start going up. The beauty is your grandparents grew butterfly bush that were just grossly oversized. I mean, come on, who needs a 12-foot shrub out there against the garden shed? It just overtakes everything. You had to prune it back, lots of maintenance. It was pretty from a distance. Otherwise, use it as a small shade tree. Well, the newer varieties coming out, there's brighter colors and there's dwarf varieties. So we've got some that are ground cover. Same pinnacle flower on it, same butterfly kind of flowers, but now they're shorter. So now you don't have all this maintenance issues that your grandparents have. They're so easy. Now you can plant them right next to that back patio or in a container, and they just look great and they bloom. Nothing blooms as long as a butterfly bush, and butterflies will be attracted to it. It's an amazing little plant. Great plant for here. Doesn't have all the disease, the spotting, that kind of stuff that other parts of the country have. Deer grass. I don't think grass gets enough play, but deer grass, and really there's two native ones, deer grass or Miscanthus, and then also bear grass. Those two grow out and about. You'll just see them. Deer grass has this pink plume to it. in the summer and fall. It's quite striking, quite pretty. And deer tend to leave it alone. So the animals, if you're right out there with Javelina roaming around, things are eating your landscape. That's a good one for you. But grasses, one that's blooming right now in the greenhouses. It's amazing. If you just need to get out and get some fresh air, and you want to see some of the leading plants starting to come in. So our first big fruit tree truck's coming, let's see, in 2 weeks, week and a half. So it's en route. So it's being packed now. So we're starting that first harvest. But Ice Angel Camellia, that's one that came in just before Christmas. And it's an evergreen. It's a winter blooming evergreen shrub, grows about hip high, kind of wide, more shaded areas. It's kind of the east to north side of trees, houses, shrub, under patios, in containers. That's where it thrives. But it's got a camellia flower. You Californians, you love your camellias. Well, this one actually grows here and takes the cold, whereas most camellia are tropical. They're winter wimps. They're going to freeze out, die, and not come back. Not Ice Angel, thus the name, Ice Angel Camellia. It's magical. It's got a flower about the size of a rose of Sharon, about the size of a baseball, maybe a little bit smaller than that, but boy, it's a pretty plant. One that I use a lot, Gilded Edge Silverberry. Silverberry is a native. In fact, I use this one instead of red tip photinia, the number one seller, red tip. I put my kids through college with red tip photinia, but I would never have that plant in my yard. It's disease prone. It's got to maintain it like crazy. It's always got powdery mildew, deer eat on it, but not silverberry. Silverberry has no animal issues, gets up well above head height, as big as you can hold your hands out. It's that big, thick evergreen, and it's a native. So get it up to size. You never have to water it again. It's truly a native plant. Great plant for here. Spirea and sumac. Those two. I'm going to try to up the speed here because I'm going to run out of time. Trying to get all 17. Come in and ask for the list. I'll give it to you. Here you go. It's an article I wrote, I don't know, a while back, and you'll have the whole list, or peruse some others. Growlow sumac, another native. It grows wild here. It's a companion to silverberry. Salvia or heat wave salvia or autumn sage is another name. That one, or Salvia gregii is another name. It's got several. It's a number one seller. It outsells Russian sage. Russian sage has this blue spiky flower to it about hip high. This one's a step down, gets about just above knee high or so, but it's got red flowers. And actually, it's got red, pink, purple, and I think an apricot color this year. Got a new color introduction. But hummingbirds just love salvia. They love autumn sage salvia. It's every yard needs at least 3. Pick a color because it just attracts. It's just easy to care for. It takes sun, takes wind. It's just a great plant for your. It's just a great one. Nandina, or heavenly bamboo, is what it's known on the West Coast. Heavenly bamboo is the common name, but Nandina is what the rest of the country calls it. Nandina is an evergreen plant, very soft. It has a bamboo kind of look to it. It's not bamboo. It's not invasive. Doesn't take over. I mean, dogs and small children are not going to be lost in Nandina. It's a good, strong evergreen plant, and animals don't bother it. So deer, rabbit, antelope, jackrabbits, they're not going to bother Nandina. Looks good in containers, looks good out in the yard, just flexible, super hardy. It looks delicate, but it's super robust, tough. So I think every yard needs a Nandina. And then, of course, yucca and lilacs. We'll leave it with those two. Lilacs, you can grow better lilacs here. They'll be a little shorter, but you won't have all the disease spotting issues that the Midwest has. We just grow them. They love this bright, high altitude. And then yuccas, lots of varieties of yuccas, and they all do well here. So grow some. So that's the 17 best landscape shrubs for Northern Arizona.
My living room feels so empty.
Now that the Christmas tree is gone, the house just seems so blah.
Brighten it up with a big, bold, beautiful plant from Waters Garden Center.
Fill that cavernous space with tall tropicals, colossal cactus, and sizable succulents that bring the great outdoors indoors.
Make a gorgeous green space you can enjoy all year, not just for a season.
Unique, exclusive, one-of-a-kind houseplants found only at Waters Garden Center in Prescott.
You're listening to garden expert Ken Lain. He can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Thanks for tuning in to the Top 10 Garden Show. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Gardener with garden expert Ken Lain. Join him daily as he answers timely garden questions that are sure to make a difference in your gardens. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
So I'm trying to think through what is next week's show going to be. So when I submit this to the stations, it's broadcast over, I don't know how many airwaves, 8 different terrestrial towers, had 27,000 downloads on our podcast channels. Apple is like trending. So if you're tuned in, listening to the podcast of this, and you're on your, whatever your streaming service is, give me a thumbs up, make a comment. Just like it, subscribe, do more. It helps me trend better. So Apple especially, they are brutal. If you don't have any kind of, if people are just listening, not interacting, they throw you down the bottom of the list. Simply go, yeah, I like that. Pretty good. Yeah, this guy, I could listen to this guy again. They go, oh, put him up to the top of the heap. This is next week's class. Next week's show, I think, is going to be on landscaping tips. So we got a garden class coming up next week, and that'll help me kind of think through that class. I'll be presenting just how many trees does a property need? How much should be dedicated to greenscape as opposed to hardscape? That is the living, breathing plant piece as opposed to patios and fences and statuary and fountains. Those are all hardscapes. There are percentages. There's 4 seasons. What balance? How many spring, summer, fall, winter evergreen should I have in the yard to make it feel right? There's formulas. I can share those with you in an hour or less. And so I think that's the direction I'm going to go. We'll see. I'm still noodling things around. The class is coming up. So we start this weekend. And we start with houseplants. So it is the time, the Christmas tree, the holiday decorations, they're kind of clearing out. And now you got these just empty spaces. And so houseplants are a good way to fill in. They're healthy. Your house is all just kind of sealed up and you just need some fresh air. Plants help you with that. And so we'll go over which are the best ones, which are the healthiest ones, which ones are for bedrooms, which ones are bathrooms, which ones are better for living rooms. How many plants should you have per room? We'll give you some of those. There are formulas for that. Actually, NASA has done amazing studies on this because they're getting ready for space travel, and they know plants are going to keep folks feeling better. So they're doing studies with this. How do they grow in negative gravity or no gravity? And so we'll share some of those ideas. Next week is top local landscapes with flair. How do you design or put together a great style of landscape? Whether you're guiding a contractor to do it for you or you're going to do it yourself. This is kind of Prescott, Arizona, this Central Highlands, this Sedona, Prescott Valley, Chino, Paulden, Skull Valley area. This I call it the Central Highlands. This is where a lot of folks retire. And you finally have time and some resources, and you can do this yourself. It's not that hard. But where do you start? We'll go over that. So it's every Saturday at 9:30. We have a different series, different class, and they're free. At the end of the month, the 27th, January is the time to put wildflowers down. We'll go over why and how to do it, and what varieties, what are the different qualities, and what style, what mixes are best for the mountains of Arizona. So it's the houseplants, landscape with flair, and the last Saturday in January is why January is the best month to plant wildflowers, and they truly are. You will have amazing flowers by putting out your seed now. You wouldn't think that. We'll go over why that is. Well, throughout the week, Lisa and I camp out here at Waters Garden Center. We're open. I know there's a little skiff of snow on the ground, but we love talking to fans of the show.
Not everyone can grow wildflowers, but we'll make sure you're not one of them.
At Waters, we know which wildflowers sprout, thrive, and bloom with success.
We're wild about wildflowers, with many of our own Arizona blends.
Like our Arizona native mix, butterfly and hummingbird mixes, and all are big, bold, and beautiful.
At Waters, we know wildflowers, and winter's a season to spread new seed.
If you want a more fruitful garden, increased success, and landscape that just feels better, then tune in daily to the Top 10 Garden Podcast. Years of tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts are guaranteed to make your gardens nicer than ever. Listen to this podcast or read Ken's weekly garden column by visiting watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Thanks for tuning in.